Growing up Jewish isn't fun whatsoever.
Really, religion in my life has played a very big part, mainly because of the title. Not the actual shit I did within the religion, just the title itself. You get accused of literally anything from I've heard, being a spy, just ruling the world, ruling on the banks, death threats, countless fucking death threats, just because of one title of being Jewish. Throughout my entire life, it's been just constant jokes, threats, and everything like that wherever I went. It didn't matter if it was at home when I was with my closest friends that I considered my second family. It didn't matter if I was at school or at work, it followed me pretty much everywhere. But they range from the casual Holocaust joke to direct death threats that almost came true. So I never really noticed how bad it was up until middle school. I noticed people were getting more intense with the jokes. Usually it would be the casual Holocaust joke. They would stop me in the hall and just say, Adam, blah, 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 here's 3 Holocaust jokes in a row, and then went on with their day. Sure, that was every day up until sophomore year of high school, where everything changed dramatically. From that point up until junior year when COVID hit, my life was hell within school. 2 notable times was in my history class when we were trying to learn about the atrocities that happened during World War II. I mentioned my great aunt who was a prisoner at Auschwitz, one of the most notorious execution or concentration camps during World War II. I told the class about how she survived the war, and we still have documents and everything because of what she went through. While I was telling that story, there were 2 kids in the back corner laughing their asses off at me, pointing at me specifically and just dying fucking laughing. That really pissed me the fuck off because that was not only my family, but it was directly towards me. The other notable time was when the teacher was teaching our lesson. I think we were learning about the American Civil War. I don't know. I'm a history nerd, so I already knew all that. I was on my computer doing my shit. The 2 kids, same 2 kids, stopped the teacher from talking, stopped the teacher from teaching her lesson just to scream out, "Hey, Adam, why are Jews so Jewish?" And then just fucking died laughing. I didn't really understand it. And honestly, that might not sound like a lot. That might just be like, okay, that's an average kid living their night or living their day in America and America's school system. But almost hearing that shit every single day for the past 12 years, it starts to get to you. And as I said before, it ranged from casual Holocaust jokes to direct death threats. The kids who were saying, who laughed at my great aunt and blurted out during class, I reported them to our admin office and the front office, whoever really was in charge of our school. They did absolutely nothing about it, and that broke my heart. But since they knew it was me who reported them to try and get them off my case, the 2 kids went after me more. They stopped me after class and said, "If you report me one more time, I will kill you." Death threats like that. All because of one title. Just me being Jewish and growing up that way. I didn't decide to be it. I didn't convert. I was just born into it and raised that way. The casual Holocaust jokes merged with a new genre of threats. They were more casual, but they still meant something. Some of them ranged from saying, "If I were Hitler, I would kill you first in the Holocaust." Every year on April 20th, Adolf Hitler's birthday, they mentioned it to me multiple times a day, every single year. Again, it might not seem like a lot. That's just a joke or something they say every so often. But this was every day for the past 12 years. So it really hit hard and drove me into a pretty bad depression from middle school into high school. And luckily, COVID, I know the worst thing that's been happening the past 2 years, was my savior from this. I didn't have to see any of those douchebag kids from school. I didn't have to talk to them. I didn't have to do any of that. So there were some ups to COVID, but for the majority of my schooling year, I dreaded going to school every single day purely because of that.
I was born in a typical family, but my family just so happened to believe in white supremacy, and so I kind of became a part of that. I had already known my family held some very interesting beliefs, but I never really questioned them too much. I kind of just thought, that's just how a family is. Up until about the age of 13, I wasn't really interested in what my family believed too much. But then I started looking online, and the internet kind of helped speed up the process of me getting involved. And before I really comprehended what I was thinking and feeling, I was standing with my father in protests and being an activist within the white supremacist community. I believed in what I was being told so genuinely. It was so hard to try to break away from that mindset. I met a bunch of people through my father, and so I started getting involved with the family's relatives and their children, and I kind of made like a little group of friends within this community. And to be honest, that's one of my biggest regrets, because one of the things that they enjoyed doing was going around town and harassing people they didn't agree with. Anything from just being rude, calling them names, to physical altercations with some of them. I remember one of the times they'd called me on the phone and invited me over to some location they had picked out to hang out at. And when I got there, they had an African American boy who was like the same age as me, and they were beating on him. And that kind of fucked me up for a long time, because the cracks started to come into play with it when I saw that, because then I started questioning, why him? What did he do? And I started to question, like what the morals behind it is. I'm not a very violent person. I don't believe that violence solves all of your problems. And to see this, and the people who I considered friends, laughing and joking while they were senselessly beating on this poor kid for no reason other than the fact that he was black, it just broke my heart, to be honest. Eventually, it got to the point where I started questioning my father and what he was telling me. Eventually, I just said, enough is enough. I need to get the fuck out of here. Getting out was the hardest part, because my father was very prestigious within this community. Everybody knew who he was. They knew who I was. They kept telling me over and over, when your dad dies, you're going to follow in his footsteps. But after everything that happened, it pretty much was like, no, I don't know if I can do this. That was a very, very hard conversation, because my father disapproved immediately. He basically told me that I couldn't stay with them if I refused to participate in what they wanted. And so I got a hotel room. I was renting out of some crappy hotel place for a while, working my job, paying the bills, and I'm doing pretty good for myself, I think. Eventually, during the lockdown, I had a moment where I was able to walk down the street and I no longer saw people for colors. I actually started to see and understand people of all different races as human beings. And I about cried in public because it was the first time that I actually realized that, there was a way for me to live without being in that mindset, without feeling any hatred, and actually working and doing my job and enjoying it, and not going home and being constantly at war with what I was thinking. Deprogramming your mind is probably one of the hardest things that somebody could accomplish.
How do you guys feel about like talking to one another? Is this awkward for you guys? Is it just like
It doesn't feel weird to me, and I feel like that in and of itself is weird, since through my experiences I've just grown up being bullied purely because of my religion of just being Jewish, and then getting the opportunity to talk to a ex-white supremacist, it's a very interesting experience, but I don't feel weird at all. Like, I don't view you as a lesser anybody. Like, I view you just as the exact same person as me, and I'm interested to hear, I guess, everything you have to say. Like, I'm not scared, I'm not any of that, I'm just interested.
And I feel like that kind of is like how I feel, but it's surreal in a way, because it's like thinking back 4.5 years ago, I would never talk to anybody. I had my friends, and that was it. Everybody else in the world was nothing, but my family and their friends were everything. And I feel like if you were to have talked to me like a year and a half ago, we wouldn't be having a conversation, you know? Like, we couldn't just sit down and have an interview, because I would just be stuck in that brain set, you know, oh, he's Jewish. Like, that would be the only thing that I'd see. But now that I've, you know, grown as a person, I can see more, you know, you and me, we're not that different.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, a couple of years ago, I mean, maybe even up till this day, the only thing I would have seen getting out of this would have been just a pure screaming match of ideologies, religion, just random crap that wouldn't help anybody. But as you said, then I grew out of that, and then we grew out of that, and now we're able to have a sensible conversation about our two lives and how they interact.
I feel like the best thing that could sum it up was I went through hell, basically. Mentally and emotionally, just straight up hell. Because when you're being told things over and over and over, especially at a very impressionable age, it is really hard to think outside of that box, because that box is what, you know, your entire reality, and it is almost near impossible to escape that reality.
Everything you just said, other than, I guess, your story and all that, but pretty much from the beginning of being told one thing at a very impressionable age, kills you. It destroys you mentally. And that can relate to both of us, you in your situation and mine in mine. Just being told that because I grew up in one religion, being told pretty much that they're going to kill me every day. My ancestors died great, like for a good reason, essentially. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's good that they died, my family and all of that, just because of our religion. Being told that every day at a very impressionable age makes you only think that one thing, that okay, I guess this is how it is. I guess I do deserve to die. I guess this is the reason why this is happening to me, because of a religion, just because I was born into it. So I guess being told that every day at a very impressionable age, it hurts, and it kills you mentally.
People do tend to remember the bad rather than the good.
I feel like that kind of is just how our brains work, because the negativity sticks with us longer than the positive stuff, because we have more invested in the bad stuff.
Yeah, it carries more in your brain, and I keep relating it back to my experience, but that's the only thing I remember through middle school and high school is just the threats and just the jokes per se. That's pretty much the only thing I remember through my education. I really don't remember much of hanging out with my friends or really happy moments in general. It's mainly just the bad. So it just sticks in your brain, as you said. If you don't mind me asking, how did you get out of your situation? How were you able to disconnect from, I guess, that side?
I had to put it simply, I had to burn a lot of bridges. There was a lot of relationships that I had to destroy in order to make my way out of that relationship and start anew. A lot of the relationships they were good relationships, you know? I had friends, I had people that I cared about. But what they cared about was something that I couldn't do anymore.
Can I ask another question if you're comfortable with it?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you still hold any of the things from your past situation from now? Like, do you still hold any of the ideology, or is it essentially completely gone?
It's kind of a difficult thing because you kind of get used to that thought process. And so I know there's a couple times where somebody will mention something and immediately that side of my brain sparks on. It's like, oh, I have to go defend it. And then I think for a minute and I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want to defend it. That's not who I am.
I think for someone who maybe started off in a good family and then found that themselves, I would be more skeptical. But I mean, you're literally fighting off your entire childhood worth of programming.
And that's basically, in summary, what it was. It was programming. After I got out, I started researching, you know, cults and how they use people's minds against them and how they program you to, you know, think and do what they say and what they want, and to basically lose your entire individuality to their
Propaganda.
system. Exactly.
Exactly. And I feel like this conversation is really good because it's essentially proving that propaganda void. Because I'm Jewish. I'm one of the people you were told to hate. I was the exact enemy of your family.
Mm-hmm.
But look at us here. We're having a nice conversation. We were laughing and being friends earlier. Like, I don't hate you at all. Like, I personally, I love this right now. And I hope even after this recording and after all this, we could even still talk, still be friends.
Oh, for sure.
That just proves, like, I'm not a bad person. I try not to be, even. So I feel like even just this is proving the propaganda and programming wrong almost immediately.
You know, there's a really interesting statistic. The odds of you supporting trans rights are like 50% higher if you've ever met a trans person. All it takes is exposure to the things you're told to hate. That's all it takes sometimes, is just realizing that the boogeyman isn't there. It's just a human being.
That's a really good quote.
Yeah.